All right, let's talk about something that drives so many of us absolutely crazy at work. Why do managers and leaders so often seem to ignore bullying? We're going to dig into why that happens and, more importantly, how to actually fix it. Let's get into it.
I mean, it's a question we've all asked, right? You see this toxic behavior, you see the damage it's doing to good people and to the team, but nothing. Management just looks the other way. You start to wonder, do they not care? Or worse, are they okay with it?
Well, here's the thing. The answer is usually not that they're bad people. It's actually much more human than that. The real reason, more often than not, comes down to one powerful, paralyzing emotion: pure and simple fear. And understanding that fear is the key to unlocking this whole problem.
So this brings us to what you could call the manager's paradox. On one hand, leaders know that ignoring a bully is incredibly expensive. The numbers don't lie. But on the other hand, they keep doing it. So what's with the huge disconnect?
Okay, let's start with a number that's just staggering. Research shows that about 65% of people who are bullied at work eventually lose their jobs. Let that sink in. They either quit to get away from the misery or they get fired because they've been unfairly painted as the problem. That is a massive brain drain for any company.
And the costs just keep piling up from there. You get high turnover, which costs a fortune in hiring. Productivity tanks because who can do their best work in a toxic environment? The whole company culture rots from the inside out as trust just evaporates. And of course, you're opening the door to huge legal and reputational risks. The price of doing nothing is enormous.
So to really solve this paradox, we have to look past the spreadsheets and get inside the manager's head. We need to understand the psychology behind why they don't act. What are the specific fears that make them feel, as one researcher put it, afraid, hopeless, and completely helpless?
And this is so fascinating because it's not just one big fear, it's a whole collection of them. Managers are afraid the bully will come after them. They're afraid of making things even worse for the person being targeted. They dread the emotional fallout, the yelling, the crying. And here's a big one. They are terrified of acting without what they see as hard evidence.
So what happens when a manager is cornered by all these fears? Well, they find an escape hatch. They rationalize. They start minimizing the behavior with phrases we've all heard like, oh, that's just their style. It's a way to avoid a confrontation they feel totally unprepared for.
You know, this need for hard evidence, this hesitation to step in, it points us directly to the real heart of the problem today. Because most modern workplace toxicity doesn't happen out in the open. It happens in what we call the gray space.
So what is the gray space? It's all those subtle, undocumented, and kind of murky moments where bad behavior thrives. It's not the shouting match in the hallway. It's the silent treatment in a meeting. And it's this ambiguity that totally paralyzes leaders.
Let's just look at the difference here, because it's huge. We all know overt aggression, yelling, insults, things you can point to. But gray space stuff is sneaky. It's gaslighting, making you question your own sanity. It's the subtle digs, the backhanded compliments, or always being forgotten on meeting invites. There are rarely any witnesses, so how do you prove it?
And that's the bottom line. This is precisely why managers feel so helpless. In the gray space, there is no smoking gun. There's no easy-to-forward email chain. It often boils down to one person's word against another's, and the manager is stuck, terrified of making the wrong call.
Okay, so if the problem is fear and ambiguity, what in the world is the solution? Well, it's not trying to turn every manager into some kind of super therapist. The answer is actually much simpler and way more effective. It's structure. Structure is the antidote to fear.
You can't fight the fog of the gray space with more fog. You need a clear path forward. The only real antidote is a clear, transparent, and structured process. A solid framework takes the guesswork and the fear of, what do I do now, off the manager's shoulders, and gives them a reliable map to follow.
So what does that look like? Well, a fair grievance procedure usually starts simple, with an informal chat to try and nip things in the bud. But, and this is key, if that doesn't work, it moves to a formal, written step. This creates the hard evidence managers are so afraid of not having. From there, it goes to objective reviewers, and finally to a clear resolution and follow-up. No more ambiguity.
And when you have a system like this, the benefits are huge. Suddenly, employees start to trust the system because they see it's fair. You get consistent results. Everybody knows the rules of the game. It creates real psychological safety so people aren't afraid to speak up. It's a total game changer.
And all of this leads to a really fundamental shift in how we should think about a leader's job when it comes to dealing with this kind of behavior.
Here is the big takeaway. A great leader's job isn't to be some perfect conflict whisperer who can magically fix people. No. Their real job is to be a champion of a fair and constantly improving process. They don't need to have all the answers themselves. They just need to trust and defend the system they have in place.
So, at the end of the day, is the goal to find these perfect, flawless managers who never make a wrong move in a tricky situation? Not at all. The goal is to stop asking our managers to be superheroes and instead give them something they can actually rely on, a perfectible process. When you shift the focus from a person to a process, you create a workplace where bullying can't hide in the shadows anymore, because a clear, fair process will always bring it into the light.